At the Christmas dinner, everyone received gifts except me. My daughter Emily laughed. Oh, we forgot about you. They wanted to insult me to humiliate me in front of the whole family. I smiled. It's okay. Look what they gave me. The room fell silent when they saw it. A document that changed everything. They turned pale when they saw it. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. Dad, we need 10,000 today. Emily's voice cut through the kitchen air like a blade. I stood in the doorway, still holding my keys, watching my daughter's face transform into something I barely recognized. The kitchen table was littered with bills, credit card statements, overdue notices. Some crumpled, others spread flat like evidence in a courtroom. Alex lurked behind her arms, crossed that smirk I'd grown to hate, playing at the corners of his mouth. Tell him about the roof, Em. The roof is sagging, Emily continued, not meeting my eyes. The contractor says it could collapse any day. We have kids sleeping under that roof, Dad. I set my keys on the counter with deliberate calm. Show me the estimate. The silence stretched like a taut wire. Emily's eyes flicked to Alex, who shifted his weight and cleared his throat. We don't need estimates, Alex said. We need action. This is the third time this month you've made us beg for what should be automatic family support. Third time. He was right about that. First the car transmission that exploded on the highway, 5,000. Then little Sophie's emergency dental work, 200 to 500 more. Now this. I'd like to see some paperwork, I said quietly, just to understand. Understand what Emily's voice rose an octave, that your own daughter needs help, that your grandchildren might get hurt. Alex leaned forward, his breath smelling of energy drinks and something sour. You're sitting on all that retirement money while we're drowning here. Don't you think it's time to share some of that wealth with the people who actually matter? I felt something cold settle in my chest. 23 years. I've been writing checks. 23 years of emergencies and just this once, and we'll pay you back when things get better. My wife Mary's voice echoed in my memory. John sometimes loved me saying no. Maybe we should sit down and go through your budget together. I suggested I could help you. We don't need a lecture. Emily slammed her palm on the table, making the bills scatter. We need our family to act like family. Alex whispered something in her ear. I caught the words selfish and holding back. Emily's expression hardened further. You know what, Dad? Her voice dropped to a register I'd never heard before. Cold and surgical. Maybe you should just leave. You're clearly not part of this family anymore. The words hit like a physical blow. I gripped the door frame, feeling the wood grain beneath my fingers anchor solid and real, while everything else tilted sideways. The kitchen fell silent except for the refrigerator's low hum and Alex's satisfied exhale. Emily turned away, busying herself with the scattered papers, dismissing me like I was nothing more than a disappointing bank teller who'd refused her loan. I walked to my car on legs that felt disconnected from my body. Through their kitchen window, I could see them already talking animatedly, probably planning their next approach. Or maybe just relieved to be rid of the stubborn old man who'd finally revealed his true selfish nature. I sat behind the wheel for a long time, watching them through that warm yellow rectangle of light. Something fundamental had shifted in the space between her words and the silence that followed, something that couldn't be undone or forgotten. The engine started with a quiet purr, reliable as always, but I didn't drive away immediately. I sat there in the growing darkness, studying their silhouettes, memorizing this moment. The moment everything changed. The house felt cavernous when I stepped inside. Empty. Mary's reading lamp still glowed softly in the corner, a habit I'd never broken. The silence was absolute, the kind that makes you hear your own heartbeat. I poured myself a bourbon, Mary's Good Crystal, the set Emily had admired so many times, and settled into my leather chair. The financial records sat in their neat files in the oak cabinet. 15 years of careful documentation. I kept every receipt, every canceled check, every bank statement. An engineer's mind doesn't discard data. The first file was labeled Emily College, 4 years at State University, $50,000 per year. I'd taken a second mortgage on this house, worked 16-hour days at the plant to make those payments. Em had called exactly twice during her freshman year, once to ask for money for textbooks, once to ask for money for a spring break trip to Beach Resort. I remember driving to campus for her graduation, staying in a motel 40 minutes away because the nearby hotels were too expensive. Em had introduced me to her sorority sisters as my dad, the one who pays for everything, and laughed like it was a charming joke. The wedding file was thicker 25,000 for one day. The photographer alone cost more than my monthly pension. I'd walked her down that flower-strewn aisle, bursting with pride, while she whispered complaints about the flowers being the wrong shade of pink. Alex's bachelor party in Gambling City. 3,500 because tradition is important. Mr. Stewart, the down payment on their first house. 30,000 because it's an investment in our future. Dad, new furniture because we can't live like college students anymore. 6,000. I flipped through the records, methodically adding numbers in my head. The pattern was clear once you looked at it objectively. Each request followed the same script. Urgency. Emotional manipulation, promises of gratitude that never materialize, followed by a cooling off period before the next crisis. Monthly emergencies had become routine car repairs that somehow always happened right before vacation season. Medical bills that insurance mysteriously didn't cover. Home improvements that were always critical safety issues requiring immediate cash. The numbers painted a stark picture. 250,000 over 15 years, not loans. I'd finally admitted that to myself. Gifts, one-way transfers from a foolish old man to his entitled daughter and her lazy husband. I closed the last file and walked to the kitchen window. The bourbon burned pleasantly, focusing my thoughts. In the reflection, I could see myself clearly for the first time in years. A man who'd mistaken enabling for love, who'd confused generosity with weakness. Mary's voice whispered again. John, sometimes love means teaching consequences. I've been grieving the wrong loss tonight. Not the relationship with Emily that had been dead for years, kept alive only by my refusal to acknowledge it. What died today was my willingness to pretend otherwise. The bourbon glass felt heavy in my hand, substantial like a decision-taking, aching shape. I'd spent 15 years being the solution to every problem, the answer to every need. Perhaps it was time to become something else entirely. I rinsed the glass and placed it carefully in the dishwasher. My hands were steady, my mind was clear, and for the first time in years I knew exactly what needed to happen next. I didn't sleep. Instead, I sat at Mary's old writing desk, surrounded by decades of financial records, watching the numbers tell their brutal story. By dawn, I calculated every penny. Not just the money I'd given, but the money they'd wasted, the debts they'd hidden, the lifestyle they'd built on my guilt and generosity. The coffee maker gurgled to life at 6:30, same as always. But when I poured that first cup, my hands didn't shake. The decision had crystallized somewhere in the dark hours before sunrise, solid and unshakable as bedrock. I've been approaching this wrong for 15 years. Emotional thinking, sentimental thinking, time, to apply the same methodical problem solving that had made me successful in engineering. Define the problem. Gather data, develop solutions. Implement with precision. The problem was clear. Emily and Alex had learned they could manipulate me without consequences. They'd been trained to see me as an unlimited resource rather than a person deserving of respect. My enabling had created the very monsters that now tormented me. I opened my laptop and began researching property law debt collection procedures, estate planning strategies. My engineering mind absorbed the information, hungrily filing away relevant details, discarding the useless ones. By 9:00 a.m., I'd scheduled an appointment with David Lawson, my attorney. I need to review my estate planning, I told his secretary. Some recent family situations have made me reconsider my arrangements. True enough, just not the whole truth. That afternoon, I drove past Emily's house, really looked at it for the first time in years. The luxury car in the driveway was this year's model. The landscaping was immaculate. Probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. New windows, fresh paint, a hot tub on the deck I didn't remember from last visit. All purchased with my money, while they claimed poverty and desperation. I parked 3 blocks away and called Mark Johnson, an old friend from the plant. Over coffee at local diner, I steered the conversation toward families. Money troubles kids these days. You're lucky with Emily, Mark said, stirring sugar into his 3rd cup. My daughter keeps hitting us up for loans she never pays back. Same with her husband. Guy can't hold a job, but somehow always has money for his toys. How's their marriage? I asked casually. Mark snorted. Rocky as hell. Money problems mostly. He's got some kind of gambling problem from what my wife hears. Credit cards maxed out. Borrowing from payday loan places, but they keep up appearances, you know. New car every year, fancy vacations, all smoke and mirrors. Interesting. I filed that information away. That evening I called Emily. My voice was warm, concerned. Honey, I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday. I was probably too harsh. Oh, Dad. Relief flooded her voice. I was so worried. We really do need... I know, but I want to do this right. Let me talk to my financial advisor, see about liquidating some investments safely. These things take time when you're dealing with larger amounts. Larger amounts. I could hear the greed sharpening her attention. Well, if we're going to solve the roof problem, we might as well address some of your other issues too. The car payments maybe pay down some credit cards. I'm thinking 40, 50,000, maybe more. The silence stretched. I could practically hear her heart racing. Dad, that's incredible. We don't deserve. Of course you do. You're my family. After I hung up, I sat back in my chair and smiled. Not a pleasant smile. The kind of smile an engineer gets when all the calculations finally balance. I had 1 week to set everything in motion. 1 week to transform from victim to architect of justice. Emily and Alex thought they were getting the biggest payday of their lives. They had no idea what was actually coming for them. David Lawson's office smelled of leather and old money. He'd been handling my legal affairs for 12 years, ever since Mary's estate. A careful man with careful words and the kind of discretion that came with small-town practice. John, good to see you. Estate planning, you mentioned. I settled into the chair across from his mahogany desk. Among other things, I need to understand my options regarding some significant loans I've made to family members. David raised an eyebrow. Loans documented transfers over $200,000 to my daughter and son-in-law over 15 years. No formal loan agreements, but clear expectations of repayment that haven't been met. David pulled out a legal pad. Tell me more. For the next hour, I laid out the financial history with engineering precision. David took notes, asked pointed questions, and by the end was frowning deeply. John, you understand that without formal loan documentation, recovering this money could be complicated. I'm not interested in recovery. I'm interested in leverage. David set down his pen. Explain. I want to know what legal rights I have, what options exist for demanding immediate repayment. What happens if they can't pay? David leaned back. You're talking about applying pressure. I'm talking about teaching consequences. 3 days later, I sat across from Susan Garcia in her cluttered private investigation office above the hardware store on Main Street. Susan had been recommended by David. Discreet, thorough, effective. Background check on your son-in-law, she confirmed, reviewing my written request. Financial history. Credit report, any legal issues. This is family business. Family protection, I said carefully. Her report arrived by encrypted email 2 days later. I printed it out and spread the pages across my kitchen table like a military strategist studying enemy positions. Alex Thompson was drowning. $35,000 in gambling debts to various creditors, including some unsavory operations that didn't appear on official credit reports. Maxed credit cards totaling $20,000. A personal loan from a payday advance company at 25% interest. Most interesting, their mortgage was 3 months behind. The bank had already sent the first foreclosure notice. Emily and Alex were living in a house of cards, maintaining their facade with desperate juggling and increasingly risky financial maneuvers. Every dollar I'd given them had gone straight through their hands to creditors, while they accumulated more debt to maintain their lifestyle. I called David again. Hypothetically, if someone owed me a substantial sum and was facing foreclosure, what options would I have? Well, if you held first position on any debts, you could demand immediate payment or force liquidation of assets. You could potentially buy their outstanding debts from other creditors. Legally complicated, but possible. How long would such a process take? Depends on how much pressure you wanted to apply. Could be weeks, could be months. I thanked David and hung up. Then I opened my laptop and began researching debt purchasing procedures. My engineering background had taught me that every system has weak points. Every structure has load limits. Em and Alex had built their lives on a foundation of borrowed money and false promises. All I had to do was introduce the right kind of stress at the right points, and their entire world would collapse under its own weight. That evening, I called Em again. Honey, I've got good news about that money we discussed. Oh, Dad, thank God. When can next week I'm setting up a family trust to handle the transfer? Makes it cleaner for tax purposes. We'll need to have Alex sign some paperwork too. What kind of paperwork? Just acknowledgement of the previous financial assistance for the trust records. Standard procedure. After I hung up, I poured myself another bourbon and walked to the window. Somewhere in the distance, Em and Alex were probably celebrating their good fortune planning how to spend money they thought was coming their way. They had no idea they were about to sign documents that would give me legal claim to everything they owned. No idea that their benefactor had become their most dangerous creditor. The game was almost ready to begin. David's conference room felt different this time, more like a war room than a law office. The mahogany table was covered with incorporation papers, bank routing numbers, and debt purchase agreements. Everything legal, everything documented, everything devastating. Central Collection Agency is now a legitimate collection agency, David said, sliding the final papers across the table. You're the sole owner, completely separate from your personal assets. The state licensing came through yesterday. I signed my name with a fancy pen Mary had given me for our 20th anniversary. Each signature felt like loading a bullet into a gun. The gambling debts I asked, purchased for $12,000. You now legally own $35,000 of Alex Thompson's obligations to various creditors. David's expression remained professionally neutral, but I caught the hint of admiration in his voice. The credit card companies were eager to sell. Collection agencies typically pay 30 cents on the dollar for charged-off debt. I did the math quickly. $20,000 in credit card debt purchased for less than $6,000. Combined with the gambling debts, I now held legal claim to $55,000 of their obligations for just over $18,000 in investment. Timeline for collection demands, I asked. Legally, you can begin immediately. Standard practice is 10-day notice, then escalation to legal proceedings if they default. I drove to Emily's neighborhood and parked where I could see their house. The luxury cars still gleamed in their driveway. The perfect lawn still looked like something from a magazine, but I knew what was happening inside those walls. My phone buzzed with a text from Susan, the private investigator. First collection notices delivered this morning via certified mail. Through their kitchen window, I could see Emily holding an envelope, her face pale. Alex was pacing behind her, gesturing wildly. Even from this distance, I could read the panic in their movements. The irony was perfect. For 15 years, they created financial emergencies to manipulate me. Now they faced real financial emergencies with no one to call for rescue. My phone rang. Emily's number flashed on the screen. Dad! Her voice was thin, frightened. Something's happening. We're getting these collection notices from companies we've never heard of. They're demanding immediate payment for debts we thought were settled. I injected just the right amount of concern into my voice. What kind of notices, honey? Central Collection Agency? They claim we owe them tens of thousands of dollars, but Dad, we've never borrowed money from any company with that name. That's strange. Have you contacted them directly? Alex tried. They say they purchased our debts from other companies. Is that even legal? I believe it's fairly common in the collection industry, I said carefully. You should probably consult with an attorney. We can't afford an attorney, Dad. I don't know what to do. These people are demanding payment within 10 days, or they'll pursue legal action. The desperation in her voice should have touched me. Instead, it felt like validation, like justice finally arriving after years of delay. I'm sorry you're going through this, Emily. It sounds very stressful. Could you help us figure this out? Maybe loan us enough to settle with these collectors. There it was. The same request wrapped in crisis demanding immediate response. The same manipulation that had worked for 15 years. I'll need to think about it, I said. This is a significant amount of money. Dad, please. We're desperate. I understand. Let me review my finances and see what's possible. After I hung up, I sat in my car for several minutes watching their house. The curtains were drawn now, The perfect facade was beginning to crack. I started the engine and drove home. Tomorrow, the real collection process would begin. The phone call came at 7:30 the next morning, jolting me from the first peaceful sleep I'd had in weeks. Dad, you need to fix this right now. Emily's voice had transformed overnight. Gone was yesterday's frightened confusion. This was pure rage, sharp enough to cut glass. Good morning, Emily. Fix what? Don't play dumb with me. Alex figured it out. Central Collection Agency. He saw that name on mail at your house last month. I poured coffee with steady hands. I'm not sure what you're implying. You bought our debts. The words exploded through the phone. What kind of sick person does that to their own family, the kind whose daughter told him he wasn't family anymore? The silence stretched between us like a loaded spring. I could hear Alex shouting in the background, his words too muffled to understand, but his fury unmistakable. This is insane, Dad. You can't do this. Actually, I can. Everything I've done is completely legal. I suggest you consult your own attorney if you have questions about the collection process. We don't have money for an attorney. We don't have money for anything because you're trying to destroy us. I took a sip of coffee. I'm simply collecting debts that are legally owed to me. Debts you accumulated through poor financial decisions. Alex's voice grew louder. He'd grabbed the phone. This is harassment, old man. We'll file a complaint with the state, sue you for emotional distress. Have you committed for mental incompetence? You're welcome to try, but you should know that threatening a creditor during collection proceedings can be considered criminal harassment. I'm recording this call, by the way. Emily took the phone back. Dad, why are you doing this to us? Because you needed to learn that actions have consequences. Because 15 years of enabling you was the worst thing I could have done as a parent. So you're teaching us a lesson. Her voice cracked by trying to destroy our lives. I'm giving you the same consideration you gave me when you told me I wasn't part of your family. That was just, I was angry. I didn't mean yes, you did. And now you're experiencing what it feels like to face financial problems without someone to rescue you. Alex grabbed the phone again. What do you want? You want us to gravel to beg fine. We're sorry. Okay, we'll pay you back everything we owe. Excellent. You have 23 days remaining to settle the $55,000 balance in full. 55,000. Emily's voice was faint. But we never borrowed that much from you. No, you borrowed that much from credit card companies and gambling establishments. I simply purchased those debts at market rates. It's all documented and legal. We can't pay that. You know we can't pay that. Then I suppose you'll need to liquidate assets, sell the luxury car, downsize, the house, make the kinds of sacrifices I made for you all those years. The phone erupted in overlapping voices. Emily crying, Alex threatening. Both of them talking over each other in desperate, angry bursts. I know about the gambling debts, Alex, I said quietly, cutting through their noise. I know about the payday loans. I know about the 3 months of missed mortgage payments. I know everything. The silence that followed was complete. 23 days, I repeated. After that, I'll be forced to pursue legal remedies, including asset seizure and wage garnishment. Dad, please. I hung up. The phone immediately started ringing again. I let it ring. 20 minutes later, it stopped. I checked my voicemail. 7 messages, each more desperate than the last. Emily crying, Alex threatening legal action. Emily begging. Alex claiming he'd call the police. I deleted them all and called David. They know I said when he answered. Time for phase 2. David's warning came at 9:30 a.m. They hired Robert Klein. He's already calling, making noise about elder abuse and financial manipulation. I wasn't surprised. Desperate people make desperate moves. What's his position? Standard intimidation tactics. Claims you're mentally incompetent. Suggests that debt purchases constitute financial abuse of a vulnerable adult. Threatens to petition for guardianship. Evidence. None that would hold up, but he'll make your life uncomfortable for a while. By noon, the attacks were multi-pronged and vicious. My bank received a complaint alleging elder financial abuse. The police got an anonymous tip about my declining mental state. 3 neighbors called, confused by Alex's claims that I was being scammed by con artists. Emily reached out to my sister Elizabeth in Desert City, sobbing about how I'd lost my mind and was destroying the family. She called our old pastor, claiming I needed intervention for dementia. She even contacted the senior center where I occasionally played chess, suggesting they watch for signs of cognitive decline. Each attack was carefully designed to isolate me to make me appear unstable and vulnerable. If I defended myself too vigorously, it would seem like paranoid behavior. If I didn't respond, their accusations would gain credibility through repetition. But I'd anticipated this. Dr. Thompson had completed my comprehensive mental competency evaluation 3 days earlier. The results were unambiguous. Cognitive function normal for my age, no signs of dementia or impairment, fully capable of managing my affairs. My financial advisor provided detailed documentation of every transaction over the past 5 years, showing consistent rational decision-making and careful asset management. David had prepared a complete defense file, years of canceled checks, showing Emily and Alex's financial dependence, documented evidence of their manipulative behavior, character references from business associates and community members. The first crack in their offensive came when Elizabeth called me directly. "John, Emily says you're having some kind of breakdown. She wants me to fly out and help manage your finances." "I'm fine, Liz. Emily and her husband owe me substantial money and I'm legally collecting it. They're trying to discredit me rather than face their obligations." "That doesn't sound like the Emily I know." "When's the last time you talked to her when she wasn't asking for something?" The pause was telling. "I can't remember." By evening, their strategy was backfiring spectacularly. The bank reviewed my account activity and found no evidence of suspicious transactions. The police officer who investigated their complaint noted that I was articulate, rational, and clearly competent. Most damaging to their credibility, neighbors started asking uncomfortable questions about Emily and Alex's sudden financial crisis. If I was being manipulated by scammers, why were collection agencies pursuing them? Elizabeth called back after speaking to several family members. "John, nobody believes their story. Everyone remembers how much money you've given them over the years. The coup came when Reverend Smith called me directly." "John, I'm sorry to bother you. Emily suggested I check on your well-being, but frankly, you sound exactly the same as always. Are you having family difficulties, some challenges with adult children who need to learn financial responsibility?" I've counseled many families through similar situations. It's one of the hardest parts of parenting, knowing when to stop rescuing them. After I hung up, I made notes for David. Every false accusation, every attempt to damage my reputation, every lie they told was now documented. If this escalated to court, I had grounds for countersuits. My phone buzzed with a text from Susan. Foreclosure notice posted on their door this afternoon. I walked to my front window and looked out at the quiet street. Somewhere across town, Emily and Alex were watching their world collapse in real time. Their attacks had failed. Their lies had been exposed, and their house, the house I'd helped them buy, now had 30 days until the bank took it back. I should have felt satisfaction. Instead, I felt something colder and more precise. The satisfaction of a problem correctly solved, an equation finally balanced after years of miscalculation. The phone rang. Emily's number appeared on the screen. This time, I let it ring. The voicemail Emily left was 11 minutes of sobbing desperation. I played it while organizing my files, her words washing over me like background noise. She'd tried to buy groceries. Car declined. She'd gone to 3 different stores thinking it was a system error. All declined. The bank had closed their credit lines after receiving my formal notification that I was calling their cosign loans due immediately. "Dad, they want $50,000 by next Friday. The car loan, the credit line, the home equity loan. We never realized you were on all of them." Of course they hadn't realized. They'd been too busy spending to read the paperwork. I deleted the message and made my next call. "National Insurance Company. This is John Stewart. I need to remove my daughter Emily Cody and her family from my health insurance policy, effective immediately." The representative sounded confused. "Mr. Stewart, they've been covered under your plan for 8 years. Are you sure you want to completely sure? Also, I'm changing the beneficiary on my life insurance policy. Emily Cody is no longer to receive any benefits. Sir, this is a significant change. Do you want to speak with a counselor about the implications?" No counselor needed. Just process the changes. 2 hours later, I'd systematically dismantled every financial safety net I provided them. The college fund I'd established for their children closed with funds transferred to charity. The emergency credit card I'd given Emily for true emergencies canceled. The joint savings account we'd opened years ago converted to my name only. Each phone call was surgical, precise, irreversible. By Wednesday, the siege was complete. Susan's surveillance reports painted a picture of mounting desperation. Alex working double shifts at the plant. Em pawning her wedding ring. Both of them arguing in their driveway loud enough for neighbors to hear. Their perfect facade was crumbling in real time. The luxury car disappeared overnight, repossessed. Emily started driving a rusted Honda that Alex borrowed from a coworker. The lawn care service stopped coming. The elaborate Christmas decorations that had made their house the envy of the neighborhood were sold on online marketplace. Thursday brought the eviction notice. Sheriff's deputies posting legal documents on their front door in broad daylight, ensuring the entire neighborhood witnessed their humiliation. That evening, my phone rang constantly. I'd learned to recognize the pattern. First, Emily would call crying and begging. Then Alex would take over, alternating between threats and desperate bargaining. Then Emily again, promising anything, everything if I just helped them one more time. I let every call go to voicemail. Friday night, I sat in my study reviewing the week's documentation. David had prepared a comprehensive report. Every debt legally transferred, every collection notice properly served, every financial support system methodically eliminated. It's been remarkably efficient, David had noted. Most collection actions take months to reach this level of pressure. The difference was simple. I understood their weaknesses because I'd been enabling them for 15 years. I knew every vulnerability because I'd been protecting them from consequences all that time. My phone buzzed with another voicemail notification. Number 14. Today I played this one. Emily's voice was barely recognizable. Whore from crying, broken by exhaustion. Dad, please. I know you're angry. I know we've been terrible, but the kids. Sophie asked why we can't afford her art classes anymore. Jack doesn't understand why his friends can't come over because we're ashamed of how the house looks now. She paused, breathing shakily. I'll do anything. We'll sign anything. Just please don't let us lose the house. Please don't let our children pay for our mistakes. I saved the message and made a note in my calendar. Tomorrow was Saturday. Tomorrow I would make Emily and Alex an offer they'd have no choice but to accept. The endgame was finally here. I didn't call Emily back. Instead, I drove straight to David's office. The manila folder on his desk contained the final pieces of my carefully constructed puzzle. Property transfer is complete, David said, sliding documents across the mahogany surface. The mortgage default, combined with your consolidated debt holdings, gives you legal ownership effective January 2nd. I studied the papers with the same attention I'd once given engineering blueprints. Every line item accounted for every legal requirement satisfied. 15 years of enabling Emily and Alex had finally produced an outcome they never anticipated. Total financial ruin. Timeline for possession. 48 hours after service of eviction notice. I recommend serving December 27th gives them time to process their new reality after Christmas. Christmas. I'd been dreading it, expecting another emotional manipulation campaign. Now it seemed like the perfect stage for justice. What about challenges, appeals? David removed his glasses and cleaned them carefully. John, this is bulletproof. They defaulted on debts you legally own. You hold first position on all their major assets. No court will overturn legitimate collection proceedings. I left David's office with ownership papers in my briefcase and a strange lightness in my chest. The house that I'd helped them buy that they'd used to manipulate me for years was now legally mine. That afternoon, I drove to their neighborhood one last time as an outsider. Using my legal right to inspect the property, I walked through rooms that smelled of expensive candles and fresh paint. They'd spent money on Christmas decorations, elaborate, costly displays that must have required credit they didn't have. In their bedroom, I found evidence of their latest deception. Thank you cards from relatives acknowledging loans Em had requested for medical emergencies. More lies, more manipulation. While claiming poverty to me, they'd been borrowing from aunts and uncles using fabricated sob stories. I photographed everything methodically. Documentation for David's files. My phone rang as I locked their front door. Emily's name appeared on the screen. Dad, I've been thinking about Christmas, about family. Her voice had shifted again. Sweetness now, contrition, the tone she'd used as a child when she wanted something special. I was hoping maybe you could come for Christmas dinner. Just family. We could talk things through, work something out. I almost smiled. One final manipulation attempt. One last effort to use emotional blackmail and holiday sentiment to extract money from the foolish old man. That sounds nice, Emily. Really? Oh, Dad, I'm so glad. Alex and I have been talking and we realize we made mistakes. We want to make things right. I'm sure you do. Christmas dinner is at 200. Nothing fancy, just family. I'll be there. After I hung up, I sat in my car outside their house for several minutes. Through the window, I could see Emily pacing excitedly, probably calling Alex with the good news. The naive old fool had agreed to come. Their Christmas ambush was set. They had no idea I'd be bringing documents that would end everything. I drove home slowly, planning my final preparations. Tomorrow was Christmas Eve. I had 24 hours to organize the conclusion of this 15-year mistake. For the first time in weeks, I felt genuinely peaceful. Christmas Eve passed quietly in my house. I spent the evening organizing legal documents in a manila envelope, pressing each paper flat, ensuring nothing would fold or tear during tomorrow's presentation. The property transfer, the debt consolidation statements, the eviction notice dated for December 27th. David had prepared everything with his usual precision. I laid out my best suit, the charcoal gray Mary had picked for our anniversary 5 years ago. Professional, dignified, appropriate for delivering life-changing news. Across town, I knew Em and Alex were orchestrating their Christmas ambush. Extended family arriving from 3 states, all expecting to witness some kind of holiday reconciliation. Em had probably spent days coaching everyone on their roles in the emotional manipulation. My phone buzzed with texts throughout the evening. Cousins mentioning they were excited to see me tomorrow. My sister Elizabeth confirming her flight had landed safely. Everyone innocent pawns in Emily's carefully planned guilt campaign. I slept better that night than I had in months. Christmas morning arrived clear and cold. I made coffee and Mary's favorite Mug-8 toast with jam. Read the newspaper like any other day. The routine felt stabilizing, normal. At 1:30, I dressed carefully. The envelope went into my jacket's inner pocket where it rested against my chest like armor. I arrived at Emily's house exactly at 200. Cars lined the street, Elizabeth's rental, Uncle Thomas's pickup, the Smiths from Midwest State, a full audience for whatever performance Emily had planned. The front door opened before I could knock. Emily stood there in a red dress. I'd never seen her smile bright enough to power the elaborate Christmas lights behind her. "Dad, you're here." She embraced me with theatrical warmth. "Everyone's been asking about you." The living room buzzed with family conversation. Expensive Christmas decorations dominated every surface. A tree that must have cost hundreds. Garlands that looked professionally installed. Wrapped gifts piled artfully beneath twinkling lights. All purchased with borrowed money while they claimed financial desperation. John Elizabeth hugged me tightly. "You look wonderful." Emily says, "You've been having some financial discussions." "We have," I said carefully. Alex appeared at my elbow, his handshake lasting a few seconds too long. "Mr. Stewart, glad you could make it." His eyes searched my face for signs of softening weakness, exploitable emotion. I smiled politely. Dinner was elaborate. Prime rib, expensive wine, everything calculated to demonstrate their gratitude and remind me of my traditional generosity. Conversation flowed around family updates. Work news, carefully neutral topics, but I could feel the undercurrent of anticipation. Emily kept catching Alex's eye. Other relatives seemed slightly on edge, as if they had been briefed about something significant happening after dinner. "Shall we open gifts?" Emily asked brightly when dessert was cleared. Everyone gathered in the living room. Emily positioned herself near the tree like a conductor preparing her orchestra. The gifts were distributed with ceremony. Expensive watches, designer purses, electronics that cost more than most families spent on entire Christmases. Elizabeth received a cashmere scarf. Uncle Thomas got expensive golf accessories. Each gift came with elaborate explanations about how Emily had searched everywhere to find the perfect thing. The pile beneath the tree dwindled systematically. Emily made a show of checking labels, ensuring everyone received their treasures. Then she paused, her expression shifting to manufacture confusion. Oh, she looked directly at me, her voice carrying perfectly to every corner of the room. I'm so sorry, Dad, but we didn't get you anything this year. The room fell silent. Every conversation stopped mid-sentence. Money's been so tight lately, she continued, her tone mixing false apology with subtle accusation. I hope you understand. I felt every eye in the room focused on me, waiting for my reaction, expecting embarrassment hurt the emotional breakdown that would justify their intervention. Instead, I smiled. That's perfectly fine, Emily. I stood slowly reaching into my jacket because I have something for all of you. The envelope felt weightless in my hands as I removed it from my jacket. 20 pairs of eyes followed my movements. The room so quiet, I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. I've received quite a gift myself this Christmas, I said, my voice carrying clearly through the sudden silence. Emily's confident smile faltered slightly. Alex shifted in his chair, some primitive instinct recognizing danger. I opened the envelope carefully, removing the documents David had prepared. Official legal papers with state seals and attorney signatures, the kind of paperwork that changes lives permanently. This house, I said conversationally, now belongs entirely to me. The words hung in the air like smoke from an extinguished candle. Elizabeth blinked rapidly, processing what she'd heard. Uncle Thomas leaned forward, certain he'd misunderstood. Emily's face drained of color so completely I thought she might faint. What? What do you mean? I set the property transfer documents on the coffee table between us, spreading them like playing cards, revealing a winning hand. Unpaid debts of $55,000. Mortgage default spanning 4 months. Legal consolidation of all outstanding obligations. My voice remained steady, professional. As of December 26th, you have 48 hours to vacate the premises. Alex shot to his feet. This is insane. You can't just, everything I've done is completely legal. I looked around the room at shocked faces, family members trying to understand how Christmas dinner had become a courtroom. These documents represent 15 years of unpaid loans, gambling debts, and financial irresponsibility that I'm no longer willing to enable. Dad, please? Emily's voice cracked. You told me I wasn't part of this family anymore, I said quietly. I'm simply honoring that decision. Elizabeth found her voice first. John, this is Christmas. Surely you can't mean I mean every word. I met her eyes steadily. Emily and Alex have spent 15 years manipulating me financially while building a lifestyle they couldn't afford. This ends now. The room erupted in overlapping voices. Uncle Thomas demanding explanations. Cousins protesting about the children. Emily sobbing that I was destroying everything. But Alex's response cut through the chaos like a blade. You vindictive bastard! This is about your ego, not money. No, I said, standing to retrieve my coat. This is about consequences. Something you've never experienced because I've been protecting you from them. Emily gripped my arm as I moved toward the door. What about Sophie and Jack? What about your grandchildren? I looked down at her desperate face. I hope someday they'll understand that enabling destructive behavior isn't love, it's cowardice. Alex stepped forward, his fist clenched. We'll fight this. We'll sue you for everything you're worth. With what money? I asked. You're bankrupt, Alex. You have been for years. I've just stopped pretending otherwise. I reached the foyer as the accusations flew behind me. Family members taking sides, demanding I reconsider, threatening to never speak to me again. The perfect Christmas Emily had orchestrated dissolving into chaos. But as I opened the front door, Emily's voice rose above the rest. I hate you. I wish you were dead. I paused on the threshold, looking back at the woman I'd raised, supported, and enabled for 34 years. I know, I said quietly. That's why this had to happen. I closed the door behind me and walked to my car through the cold December air. Behind me, I could hear muffled shouting, crying the sound of perfect Christmas gifts being swept aside for emergency family conferences. I started the engine and drove home through empty streets decorated with cheerful holiday lights, leaving behind the wreckage of the last manipulation they would ever attempt. The house felt cathedral quiet when I returned. I hung my coat carefully in the closet, placed the legal documents on my desk, and made tea with the same deliberate precision I'd used for engineering calculations. My phone began ringing at 4:30. Emily first sobbing apologies and desperate pleas, then Alex screaming threats and legal challenges. Elizabeth demanding I explain myself. Uncle Thomas trying to mediate. I let every call go to voicemail. By evening, the calls had stopped. I suspected Em and Alex were too busy fighting each other to coordinate further attacks. 15 years of hidden resentments would be spilling out now. Emily blaming Alex's gambling debts. Alex exposing Emily's manipulation tactics. Both of them realizing their perfect facade had finally collapsed completely. The next morning brought confirmation from David. They retain Robert Klein again. He's making noise about Christmas ambush tactics and emotional duress, but he has no legal standing. Property transfer stands. Timeline proceeding as planned. Eviction notice served at 9:00 a.m. They have until December 28th to vacate. I spent the day organizing Mary's belongings, finally ready to sort through memories I'd been avoiding. In her jewelry box, I found the pearl earrings she'd worn on our wedding day. Em had always admired them, had assumed they'd be hers someday. Now they go to charity along with everything else Emily had considered her inheritance. Elizabeth called on December 27th, her voice carefully neutral. John, I've been thinking about Christmas dinner, about what you said, and Emily told me about the money you've given them over the years. The amounts. She paused. I had no idea it was so much. Most people didn't. She also mentioned that she told you weren't family anymore. Said she didn't mean it. She meant it, I said quietly. People don't say things that cruel unless they mean them. So this is permanent. You're really evicting them. This is justice, Liz. Something I should have delivered years ago. The eviction proceeded exactly as David had predicted. Em and Alex left quietly loading their remaining possessions into a borrowed truck while neighbors watched from behind curtains. No dramatic scenes, no last-minute interventions, just the inevitable consequence of 15 years of financial irresponsibility. New Year's Eve arrived with unusual stillness. I sat in my living room watching snow fall past the window, thinking about the year ahead. No more crisis phone calls. No more financial emergencies. No more walking on eggshells around people who saw me only as a source of money. The loneliness was real, but it felt clean, honest, like breathing after years of holding my breath. At midnight, I toasted Mary's memory with her good champagne. You were right, I said to her photograph. Love sometimes means saying no. The house was mine again. My money was my own. My time belonged to me. For the first time in 15 years, I was free to discover who John Stewart could be when he wasn't being manipulated, used, and taken for granted. The phone sat silent on the table beside me. No desperate calls for help. No manufactured emergencies. No one treating me like a personal bank account. Justice, I realized, doesn't always feel triumphant. Sometimes it just feels like peace. I finished my champagne and went to bed knowing that tomorrow I'd wake up in a house that belonged to me with money and accounts that only I could access. Free to build whatever relationships I chose based on mutual respect rather than financial dependency. The revenge was complete. But more importantly, the enabling was over. And that I thought as sleep came easily for the first time in years was the real victory. If you like the story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.